A Prayer for Walton Bay, a novel based in the area of Kingston, Ontario in the late 1800s. This story was inspired from the desire to see Canada return to its simple roots after seeing such division during the pandemic in recent years. Available now on Amazon, this book will help fund our efforts here at Momentum Canada, since we are not government funded. Rather than just ask for money, I wanted to give you something wholesome for you to enjoy as well. So place your order today and enjoy a great story for such a time as this.
All right, how's it going, everybody? Brandon McCaskill here with Momentum Monday on Momentum Canada. Welcome to the program. We do this every single Monday, same time, same place. And it's just an opportunity for us to jump in the chat and have a conversation. We talk about, I try to grab a handful of topics that have made the headlines over the last week. So today we're going to be talking, obviously, about the Chinese spy balloon. Everybody's talking about that. I'll also be covering the censorship bill, C-11, and we'll touch on bill C-21 as well, the firearm legislation that's been heated discussion for far too long. So, yeah, you just saw the ad for my book. That's available right now. You can go on Amazon. Like the ad says, it helps us do what we do here. We don't just like asking for money. It's kind of cool to give you something that you can enjoy, so everybody gets something. So be sure to do that. A Prayer for Walton Bay, that's what it's called. And we're going to have, and I'm hoping we'll have both of them on, but I'm going to have John Mallett here on the show today, because he's been digging into this bill C-11, and we both been chatting back and forth about it. It's just so confusing. It's so complex and unnecessarily so. I mean, my opinion, the whole thing needs to be scrapped. And I think that's the opinion of probably most of you when you look into what the bill entails. But before we get into that, let's just say hello to you guys. We had a comment sitting here before the stream started. That's Dinosaur Prince. He says, speaking of censorship, did anyone see what happened with Zot's channel? Now, I'm not too familiar with Zot, but I think he's a freedom fighter, a streamer that was there in Ottawa during the height of the protests and stuff like that. So I didn't hear that. If you guys have heard that, please let me know in the comments. Yeah, so like I said, this is an opportunity for you guys to come in the chat, say hello. If you have questions or if you have things you want to talk about, make sure you put them below, and we'll make sure we'll get to those comments. Fighting Hate 101 says, YouTube removed my last video last night and gave me a second strike. Oh no. What did you do? What did you do? What was your sin? Tell me all about that. Lynn B. Truck Castro Jr. There were several balloons, one over central U.S., one over Latin America, one over Canada, one over Japan, plus others. That's what I've been hearing. Now, last night, Brooke from Serious for Sarnia here on the channel, he said he wanted to join me to talk about it because he had a lot to say on it. But I don't know if he's gotten too busy, but we'll cover that. There's actually, yes, Zot was a streamer in Ottawa. Gotcha. Yeah, because it sounded familiar when I read that comment, so I had to look him up. But I wonder why he was censored, or was he deleted? Like, because if his channel's completely gone, that's pretty bizarre. But if it's just one of his videos that got taken down, I wonder what that was. It's probably, my understanding, well, the terms of service and the content you're allowed to talk about on YouTube is sometimes pretty vague. But the two things that I try to stay away from is the jibby-jabby talk, creating the jibby-jabby hesitancy, and as well as elections. So I try to steer clear of that. But guys, like the bottom banner says on the screen, that little red banner that's scrolling, it says we are on Rumble, but we need 25 subscribers because it's a new channel. I don't have 25 subscribers yet. I think I'm short like 6 subscribers right now. So once I hit 25, I'll be able to go live. So make sure, take a minute right now, because actually I see John Mallett. He's Looks like he's ready to get going. But while you guys are waiting, go over to Rumble, search up Momentum Canada, and subscribe to us so we can go live there. And that's what I'll do next week on the stream, so that if we want to talk about something sensitive, we can have that avenue to do that. So let me just catch up here, then I'll bring John in. Fighting Hate 101 says, I filmed a speech at a rally today. Oh, so what was said in the speech? Let me know. I'm interested in that. Limby says, U.S. didn't shoot down the balloon until after it had already covered the entire U.S. continent. Mission accomplished. All data was live streamed to China by then. Yeah, me and John are going to go back and forth on that. We both kind of think it's funny. A lot of funny memes have been coming out surrounding that too. I already signed on Rumble for you, Brandon. Thank you, Honeycomb. Appreciate that. Limby says, well, how dare you, Fighting Hate 101. Truth is not permitted in our new clown world. Yeah, how dare you? All right, so let's bring in John Mallett. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you? You hear me now?
I can hear you loud and clear. Yeah, we were having some connection issues, but no, yeah. This is nice.
Turns out the phone's a better device than the laptop, I guess. Who knew?
Yeah, the phones are pretty amazing little pieces of machinery. That's for sure. Compared to laptops, at least.
Yeah, they also work as spy balloons.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Spy balloons. There's so I'll just let you talk about what's your opinion on what's been going on these past few days with the past week with these spy balloons.
I mean, obviously it's a concerning thing for one.
There's different levels of concerns, right, though?
Yeah. And I think for me right now, it's mostly just seeing a lot of the irony, like a lot of people that are on TikTok that are worried about it. Not realizing that TikTok is actually a Chinese government owned app that is the most aggressive data mining app on the planet. Yeah. That's a bit ironic. I'm also a little confused about why it took so long to take it down.
Yeah.
That's a little weird.
Yeah. I was just watching there was I think it was CTV interviewing the defense minister. I don't know if you remember his name. I always know his face. I see him beside Trudeau all the time, but the guy was asking him that, and he was like, well, it's confidential. And if we were to tell the public, it would undermine our strategies. I'm like, really? What strategies?
Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, obviously, we're not privy to some info, so who knows? Maybe he's right. But at the same time, it just seems very odd to me that if you're worried about a spy balloon over your country, that you'd probably take it down immediately. That's just my thought. I mean, I look at it like if somebody's flying their drone in my backyard, right? I'm probably going to take that down.
Yeah. And I gave you the analogy this morning. I said it's kind of like if you have a beware of dog sign in your backyard and the neighborhood kids, they sneak their hamster under the fence just to see if there is actually a dog back there. But the hamster makes it all the way across the yard and out the other side.
Well, yeah. You'd also think too, like with world events the way they are right now, that it'd be a bit more of a pressing issue that the Chinese appear to be spying, right? And I mean, I will say appear because, I mean, I guess we don't fully know yet. Maybe it was a weather balloon, but highly doubtful.
Well, Biden, I don't know any of these guys' names. Biden's top guy at the Pentagon, they were saying that they were 100% sure that it was surveillance.
Right.
So I don't know how they determine that. And like what blows my mind is like, why would don't they want to investigate this? Why would they do it in the ocean? Like while it was over Montana, all these like cornfields for miles, that seemed to me the perfect place to do it, to blast it out of the sky.
But there's a lot that's odd about it. I mean, there's no question there. But what are you going to do, right? I guess we can just wait and see. But
yeah,
I think with everything going on, like with Russia and all, I mean, let's face it, we know China is going to align with Russia. So, I mean, that kind of a little bit of a concern there.
To me, I think it's just like, well, first of all, here's the path of the balloon. So this is number one. You can see this, eh? This is on the screen.
Yep.
So position number one, China left. There's the wind currents. And then day number two was Alaska. Day three was just over Canada. So it looks like it went over BC, and can't really tell if it touched Alberta.
Well, in all fairness, they could have been just checking on their Chinese police station.
Yeah, well, that's right where it is, isn't it? In Canada,
in around that area anyway. I'm pretty sure it's in Alberta somewhere. I forget exactly where, but
yeah, all the nuclear facilities flying over it. Then by day 5, it was on the East Coast. Just insane. But yeah, for me, I think it's just because for decades the Chinese have been, I'll call it, infiltrating our Western society for that long. I mean, they've been unashamedly trying to influence our schools, especially in the States. And like one of the congressmen over in the States, Eric Swalwell, like he was literally in bed with a Chinese spy. Like, to me, this was just them mocking the United States, saying like, yeah, we can even fly a little balloon over there and they won't do anything about it.
Well, I think there's a lot of mocking going on. I mean, I mentioned that as an example, TikTok being a Chinese government-owned app. What's really interesting about TikTok is knowing how TikTok is in China versus how it is here, right? Let's say you have a kid on TikTok in China. Are they seeing a bunch of nurses doing dances during COVID? No, they weren't. Actually, what they get is all educational. It's all math, science. Right. You know, they're trying to create some smart kids, and then they send the version of TikTok we get over here to do the opposite. That's kind of what I see anyway.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how it's structured, but I heard one time like they have I don't know if curfews curfew is not the right word, but like restrictions on how long they can watch certain content. And
they're very I guess you could say controlling over stuff they see on the internet, stuff that they see on TV, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, like I just find it kind of funny that, you know, the TikTok there is a very different kind of thing. And then when you take that into account, you kind of see where, you know, maybe they're trying some form of propaganda to try and dumb us all down or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And it's working.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, really.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Let's catch up on these comments. Dylan B says there were several balloons. I already read that one. So yes, Zot was a streamer in Ottawa. So someone's channel was taken down. We're just trying to figure out why. Ironically, the communist country my dad escaped from now has more free speech than we do here. So I'm guessing that was North Korea. No. I know Pinto Sack. He's definitely not from North Korea. Fighting Hate 101. I filmed a speech at a rally. Okay, so I've read these comments, I think. Yeah, I've read that one. I just want to stay updated with you guys. I already signed on. Thank you. Appreciate that. Limby says, hey, John. Happy Valentine's Day, Eric Swalwell. Fang, bang, bang. Gosh. It's not. What's the date today? We still have a week till Valentine's Day. Lynn B says, LOL, right on. Eric Swalwell, love balloon from Bang. Something's weird. Something weird's happening with our comments because I keep repeating.
Spy balloon.
Yeah. It took that long because Joe Tato is as Chinese compromised as is the Grand Turd of Canada.
Well, he does look up to them, remember?
Yeah. What did he say verbatim? Do you remember?
It was something about that, praising their dictatorship and something about how the economics of it. I can't remember his exact wording, but yeah, it was very like, what?
Is this secret admirer? Well, not so secret. The speech was titled, okay, so Fighting Hate 101 said he gave a speech and his video was censored. So the speech was titled Dutch Resistance Inspires John Carpe. It was about World War II in the Netherlands. Interesting. Lenny Malley, it took that long because Joe Biden and Hunter Biden are paid for by your CCP. You know me down with the CCC, they say Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't disagree there.
Can't disagree. The document found in Joe Tato's home that Hunter lived in all lived in all involved, China and Ukraine. China has paid Joe millions, so he has to comply with their wishes and desires. It's true. There's so much compromisation going on with the Biden family. It's disgusting.
I think it's kind of going everywhere. You remember a while back there was that video, the Chinese dictator kind of scolding Trudeau.
Yeah.
And he just kind of walked away with his tail between his legs. I mean, it does kind of seem like maybe they do hold some power over some of our leaders.
Yeah. What was that about? He was just saying, like, we had a private conversation. You wouldn't.
Yeah.
Your press
Yeah. Yeah. They weren't too happy about that,
but Foreigner says, excuse me, the balloon must have had made in China on it. Friendly reminder. We're awesome. Thank you, Lynn Beat. She puts all these reminders for us. Hunter Biden and Joe Biden are so wrapped up into the CCP, you don't even know how deep the rabbit hole goes. It's true. My grandfather's name is Charlie. He was Ronald Reagan's personal bodyguard. Interesting. 100% spot on. Whatever I said or whatever John said was spot on. Right on. Lenny Malley, we don't have cornfields in Montana, just lots of wheat fields and plenty of area to drop it on the ground unless it lands in a nuclear missile silo. Right.
You know, maybe they were looking for the Yellowstone Ranch. That's possible.
Yeah.
Maybe they thought somebody needed to go to the train station. I don't know.
Right. And I watched the video of it being shot out of the air. I think they said it was like it landed like 7 miles from where they shot it. So there was a bit of debris, area that they had to be concerned about. But you would think somewhere in Montana has just miles and miles of open area. But I'm not too sure. Lenny Malley, why would you not shoot a balloon down? This is the middle of the ocean before it gets to your shoreline. Common sense. Now, I was watching, I think it was Laura Ingraham, Fox News, and the person she was interviewing said the water isn't very deep there. So if it's shallow enough, maybe they can retrieve some of the parts to investigate, but not entirely sure. Honeycomb says, just like Trudeau is doing to Canada. Yep, that's right. China got what it wanted again. We're screwed. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, they've been kind of mocking the Western world for years and years. This isn't something new. This is kind of just like their, I don't know, icing or cherry on the top, icing on the cake of mockery for them, I think. China dumbing us down. Is that remotely possible? I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure we can reach new depths.
I see it every day. I mean, there's something some people say, you're just like, really?
Yeah.
Joe Biden bought and paid for by the CCP, Unami. I admire China's basic dictatorship. Yep, they are able to turn their economy on a dime. I didn't know that last part.
I knew I was close.
Yeah, not bad. What is the garbage you're teaching your kids school? They ain't teaching them to get smarter or teach them to be dumber and ask no questions.
I mean, that's a fair point. We are more so taught obedience than anything else, and it's not like we're really taught any real life skills or anything, right? Like, we're taught algebra and some kind of watered down version of history, maybe a little science, some English, but taxes and anything else that we actually have to deal with in our lives. Yeah,
I was watching a very interesting podcast about homeschooling and just like the pros and cons to it. And it was super interesting. It was basically the woman making the argument that when you homeschool, it's like raising them to be super strong, like entrepreneurial thinkers, where they're not reliant on some sort of structure to guide them and to form their opinions. And I thought that was kind of a good point.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an interesting point.
Yeah.
They certainly wouldn't have necessarily the group think either, right? Like, I think there is a lot of that going on. And
oh yeah. Well, like I was homeschooled from grades 1 to 9, and I was a super awkward kid. I'm still an awkward kid, but I was also raised with 7 brothers. We basically owned the neighborhood. All the neighborhood kids wanted to play with the McCaskill baseball team. Like we had social interactions, but I understand the people that live out in no man's land and they don't get any social interaction. That's probably a bit problematic, but I think there's ways around it. Lenny Malley says they take down anybody's channel that spews the truth. Welcome to the United States banned in the U.S. If you want our government to shoot down a balloon, write the word freedom on it. There you go.
Yeah, that'd help.
That's true. It's true.
Actually, I really love that one meme where it was talking about, like when NORAD's tracking Santa, right on it. But Chinese spy balloon, a little slow on that one.
Might offend someone. When you're bought and paid for, time to collect. Life skills such as shop and home EC are no longer taught. Yes, right on. We're caught up. So let's pivot here. Let's talk about you and I have been talking about just this morning, Bill C-11. So you kind of want to jump. What do you want to say about it? I'll leave it to you.
I mean, for one, it's way too broad.
Oh yeah. By the way, I'll just clarify. Bill C-11 is the censorship bill. I should mention that in case there's people watching.
Yeah.
Don't know what we're talking about.
Like, I don't know. I have a few thoughts on it. Like, for one, obviously they're updating the Broadcasting Act from the 1990s to include online content and so on and so forth. Now, my thing is, though, back in the 90s when they did that, they came up with the Canadian content regulations. And like, as an example, I told you when I was working for Blackburn on radio, we had to have 33% Canadian generated content.
Really?
And this was aimed at, I guess, promoting Canadian creativity and I guess maybe trying to make our content a little better. Now, I would think that if that act in the 90s had actually worked the way they had wanted it to, why do we need this one? That's my first question. Because quite honestly, I don't think mandatory Canadian content does anything to boost our creativity or make us better. It's just a participation trophy.
Yeah.
That's essentially what I see, right? Like we're eliminating any kind of competition. So where are we getting better?
That's a good point.
And the other aspect I think that is really funny about it is when it's talking about it's aiming at diversity and equality and wants to give, maybe some more projects towards natives, people of color, so on and so forth. But if you're going to be limiting foreign content, I mean, what is that saying to any immigrants coming to the country that may have things that they watch that aren't here and are not considered Canadian content? Not to mention, since when does the government decide what is Canadian culture? I thought that was kind of our decision. And last I checked, I mean, when I grew up in school, we were taught that we were multicultural. So I'm not really sure what it's really going to do. And then on top of which, a lot of it is pretty broad in what the CRTC will be allowed to do. It's not really spelled out in there.
Right.
And some of the definitions I think are lacking as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically you're saying like your observations from like the 90s up to recent years, like I guess pre-internet era, right?
Right.
Because all of this is about is giving more power to the CRTC of regulating what's on the internet.
Yeah.
So they're trying to tap into this market that they haven't been able to so far. But you're saying even in their old model without the internet, that didn't work. That's essentially what you're saying.
I mean, I feel that way. I mean, like if you look at an international stage, let's say.
Yeah.
I mean, where do we really rank internationally when it comes to music, when it comes to movies, when it comes to any of that stuff? Like, has that Broadcasting Act really catapulted us anywhere? No, I would say not. I mean, I'm not saying that we don't have talent, we don't have creativity. I'm just saying that it kind of hinders it. And like when you're just forcing it, I guess. Right. Not to mention with the way that there's talk of, like, say, the discoverability.
Right.
That's another one where they want to kind of mess with the algorithms in what's going to pop up for you.
Mm.
Who is to decide, what we want to see?
Right.
Like, that's where I'm trying to understand. Like, it's really difficult. And then for some people to say that it's not going to affect content creators, well, here's the problem. If you're on YouTube and YouTube is subject to this bill, then yes, you are indirectly being affected by this one way or the other. Whether it's positive or negative, we don't know yet necessarily, but it just, I don't know. It's really hard to say what the real aim is of the bill.
Yeah.
But I don't really like the idea that they're going to try and I guess tell businesses how to run their models, how to do this and that, and decide what is and what isn't culturally appropriate for Canadians.
Yeah. Yeah. And so on February 2nd, so what's the date today? 6th?
Yeah.
6th. So 4 days ago, it was discussed in the Senate, which they did a study. And they're saying this is the most in-depth study they've done on something like this. And they've proposed a lot more amendments to be made to this bill. But I'm reading from, and I'll bring this up. This is from forget his title, Minister of something.
Heritage?
Yes, Heritage Minister.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're going.
Stuff? Yeah.
Yep, that regardless of the amendments, that they're not going to accept them. Like how, like that to me is a sign. Like, you're going to admit that they just did the most extensive study.
Yeah.
To try and come up with their amendments, meaning that this is like the most time they've ever taken. They've put the most work into, and you are automatically disregarding it all before you've even seen the amendments.
Right.
That's a bit much, I think.
Yep. Yeah, here's the video. There's 2 different clips side by side, so watch that.
Are you open to conversation, or are you open to have an open mind and looking at the substantive amendments that I believe, listening to the testimony and the debate at this committee, will become?
So yeah, Pablo Rodriguez is his name.
Yeah.
I was born with an open mind, Senator. So, of course, I have an open mind on this. I cannot say at this moment, yes, I would agree or disagree on it, technically speaking, with an amendment that I never read. That's you understand that I cannot do that. On the general principle, we're open to that. But this bill comes after lots of consultation on the previous bill, C-10, remember? And that was discussed here too. Now the C-11 has been discussed and consulted across the country. You had about 120 witnesses, which is amazing. You did an amazing work here. So we think that it's a right balance, but of course we're ready to look at the amendments.
Are there amendments that you've already looked at that you have decided to reject?
Well, we'll see when the bill comes back, because I can't. It's in the Senate. I don't think the senators would.
They've talked a lot about what those amendments are.
But there are amendments that have zero impact on the bill, and others that may have some, and those we will not accept it.
The ones that will change it, we will not accept.
Right. And I love how he says that, and even admits that he hasn't even read any of them.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know, the bill seems like a terrible idea to me, especially the little part where they're going to expect, say, YouTube or Netflix, as an example, to go and spend millions of dollars to produce Canadian content.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Senate, well, they're selected. They're not elected, right?
Right.
So they don't even have a say, really. And I like how JJ, the video I sent you, he put it, he said they're basically the rubber stamp, like the advisor board. So technically the House doesn't even have to listen to them. So that's
Correct.
the troublesome part. But I'm hoping that there are some level-headed people in the House. I know that's kind of an impossible thought, but I'm hoping that their amendments are compelling enough to raise a few eyebrows. I guess that's where the hope is right now.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if the bill was a little more clear, right? Like, who is it truly going after? What is it truly meant to do? Like, I mean, do I disagree with trying to get more Canadian projects? Absolutely not. I would love to see more, but at the same time, if you're forcing it, right? Like, I don't know. And like, is Netflix even going to go for that? Or are they just going to pull out? Do they really need our revenue? Right? Like, that's the other aspect of this is, are you then going to make these big tech giants just say, screw it, we don't want to do this?
Yeah, it's a good question.
And again, I go back to, it's like that video that you had sent me earlier. I love where he said, it's like they're saying that they're not going to restrict books, but they're going to regulate the bookstore, right? Yeah. Like, that's a great analogy there. And I mean, for the stuff that we're going to see or get in our algorithms, like, I just don't understand who gets to make that decision. It seems pretty subjective to me.
Yeah. It just makes me think like this entire bill, like not even just the amendments, but the entire thing is just so pointless. Like
it seems it, because I mean, I'm still trying to figure out what the problem is with Netflix, because last I checked, I mean, first of all, if you use a VPN, you're not even going to get the Canadian Netflix anyway. So that's pretty pointless.
Yeah.
But let's say you do have Canadian Netflix. I mean, there are Canadian shows on Netflix. I mean, hell, they got Due South.
Yeah.
They got Trailer Park Boys. They've got, you know what I mean? Like, there's a number of Canadian produced and made shows that are already there. So I really don't understand the need for the bill.
Yeah.
I mean, then again, I also don't understand the need for forcing Canadian content either. I mean, if the Canadian content is good, it'll be seen.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And that same thing can be applied to what we're going to be talking about in terms of C-21 as well. But first, let me get to the comments. I want to see what you guys are saying. Can we have a critique of U.S. activities around the world over the past century before trying to portray China as the big bad monster?
I mean, that's fair. That's a fair point. I'll give that.
Yep.
I mean, like, to me personally, whether it's China, Russia, Canada, US, any of them, they're all essentially the same to me. We're all meddling in stuff that we shouldn't be, creating wars that we shouldn't be.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's a fair point. I'm certainly not going to say it isn't.
Oh yeah. Yeah, all the unnecessary wars, unnecessary lives lost.
Yeah. You know what I've always said? The problem is that we don't send the leaders to war. Right? Put a leader on the front line and see how quickly that war is resolved.
Like Zelensky?
Yeah, but I mean, like, actually put him on the front line. Not just a photo shoot with a green screen.
Yeah. Exactly. Bill C-11 has to die. Yes, exactly. Lenny says, Ashley Biden diary, how Joe loves to shower with his daughter. Oh my gosh. Yep. Of course they do. The Chinese have photographs of all your high government official molesting children. Maybe 6 miles off the coast. Okay. So he's talking about the balloon drops.
Yeah.
So, and that's right by the ocean where the wind was just probably a lot crazier than it would have been in Montana. That's just my understanding of how the weather works. Lenny Malley says, and a 7-mile scattering pattern. Okay. That's where that 7 came from. The spy balloon hovered over 21 U.S. air bases, nuclear silos, pinpointing strike areas. Methinks when the Taiwan war begins, Biden's masters in Beijing will warn him they will be taken out. Very possible.
Yeah, I can see that.
Very likely. Water was only 45 feet where they shot it. So that's still pretty deep. I mean, I mean, I don't know how deep it has to be for like a ship to pass. Do you know what that is?
Oh, I have no idea.
I mean, we live on.
I would think 45 feet would do it though, but I don't know.
It seems like a lot, but I guess in terms of something falling from that height, it's probably not very deep. Homeschool children come out much smarter than ones that go to your schools and are taught by the school system, which are teaching communism. Well, yes and I definitely heard the opposite stories, but I
Yeah,
think
I mean that one there's a lot of variables.
Oh, yeah.
Right. There's a lot of variables to that, but I think maybe if you're going to go with the variable of you are taking somebody who is very dedicated to homeschooling their child, maybe yes.
Yeah. Just the thought alone, like just homeschooling alone, doesn't do the trick. You got to be a good parent.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables for sure. I mean, I'm not necessarily one who's going to say that the public system's better, that's for sure, but
yeah. All right. Yeah, Linby, you're spewing too much truths. Yes, sir. Alberta 51. Man, but thanks for understanding. Awesome. Thank God for Hunter Biden's laptop, the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, that's
a laptop from hell.
Been a great story.
Yeah. They have been trying to kill me off and still have not succeeded, even though they have murdered my children. Oh, dear. That's not good. Your children, oh, dear. They had Antifa run over my son and murder him. They released her the same night with no license, no insurance in the state of Montana after she run my son down walking to work. It was a hit meant to silence me, but only pissed me off. Wow. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, that's brutal.
That's pretty, yeah, brutal. I didn't realize you were listening from Montana. Great to have you. And that's, yeah. So you were right in the airspace there, I guess, with the balloon. Oh, no, I'm sorry to hear that. Right on. All right, let's see what else we got here. Looks like you guys are just chatting right on. So we'll pivot over to Bill C-21. So Bill C-21 is the firearms grab. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of it. I'm not a gun owner. I've only spoken to gun owners. So what's your understanding of the bill and where it stands right now, John?
Well, I mean, I don't like the bill. That's for sure. Now, I haven't really paid too close attention because it's one of those ones I feel like we're not going to get a whole lot of saying. You can only hope that the conservatives would maybe try and fight it, but it seems they're just happy with taking little small victories with having amendments removed or whatnot. But overall, the gun grab, I think, is disingenuous, and I think that it's really idiotic to think that that's what's going to lower gun crime.
Right.
I mean, I don't know very many legal gun owners that get convicted of gun crimes. So to me, it seems a bit odd. And then, of course, there's always the assault style.
Yeah.
Like, what does that even mean? Because you can take what you call an assault style and compare it to your non-assault style, and they both work mechanically exactly the same, right? They both fire the same rate.
Yeah.
Both, you know what I mean? Like, it makes no sense. And
yeah, you can find a water gun that's an assault style.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah. So this was the CCFR that tweeted this out. This was when it was announced. Marco Mendicinos. That's the guy I was the public safety minister that I couldn't think of. His office said that the Liberal government had consulted only 3 gun control groups, but no hunting or firearms groups.
Of course.
Of course.
Well, you can only consult those who are going to support.
Yeah.
Right. You can't bother to go and see what the others are saying, because I mean, that's the thing. Majority of these guns being banned are all just hunting guns, right? Like, and I mean, you know what, even if you're just going to go to a shooting range, who cares?
Yeah.
Right. I have a buddy that does have a gun license, and he actually brought me out to Lambton Sportsman's Club. We shot some guns. I honestly see the allure. I really do. It's a fun time out.
Yep.
It does take some skill. We did some clay shooting. I'll tell you, that is difficult.
It's fun though.
I did shoot 3 more than I thought I would.
Yeah,
that's for sure. But yeah, I fail to see what any kind of gun grabs do for safety. I fail to see any of it. Right. I mean, especially when you look at a government who has traditionally scaled back mandatory minimums for gun crime. Like, how can you say that you're serious about gun safety and gun crime, but then scale back your mandatory minimums on it?
Yeah.
Like that those two statements don't coexist, right? Like,
yeah.
To me, it just, I don't know, it's a signal that maybe something's coming and they know we're not going to be okay with it, right? That's the only thing that I can come up with.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat. But
I mean, we see what was going on in Netherlands, right? They want to take back farmland. They want to, all for these sustainable energy goals and whatnot. Yeah. So, I mean, who's to say that's not going to happen here, especially with a prime minister who looks up to dictators?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. So, like, as it stands right now, the bill is withdrawn, but the amendments were withdrawn.
Yes.
But the bill is still on the table.
Yes.
So,
I mean, that's kind of where, like, it sucks because the Conservatives are out kind of, touting it as a win, but I mean, it's not really a win.
No.
Granted, I mean, they are kind of outnumbered, right, with this coalition government. So,
right.
What really can they do? But
yeah,
you would think that they would at least put up a little bit more of a fight, though. But
you would hope. Yeah. So I'm going to play this 30-second clip. I think it sums it up nicely. Then I'm going to play an ad from our sponsor. And then I think I have Brooke waiting in the waiting room. So we'll bring him in right after that. So don't go anywhere. Here's this last video.
So this is one of the guns that would have been banned by the G4 amendment. It is a 9mm rifle that's used in sport shooting. Cautious optimism because they've pulled back this amendment. They very may well put another amendment in that does it in a different, sneakier way, knowing how things have happened throughout this entire process. But remembering that C-21 itself still is a bad bill. So this is one of the guns that would have been banned.
Constantly getting sick? Are you struggling to bounce back post-pandemic as quickly as you used to? If so, you may be experiencing a depleted immune system. Fortunately, there is a solution. It's called Ancient Immunizone with Adaptogen from the JVJ DNA company. JVJDNA.com's founder has developed a new immune-boosting supplement specifically designed to support and strengthen your immune system, helping you to feel your best and stay healthy. His supplement contains a unique herbal formula called Adaptogen. Adaptogen has been shown to support optimal immune function. With regular use, you can expect to see an improvement in your overall health and well-being and shake off the post-pandemic blues. So why wait? Start supporting your immune system today and take control of your health. Try the JVJ DNA Ancient Immunizone with Adaptogen and see the difference for yourself. And don't forget, you can use promo code FIT24 and save yourself 10%. That's FIT24 for 10% off any order at the JVJDNA.com web store.
Right on. We have Brooke Day here with us. How you doing, sir?
How's it going, fellas?
Great. We've covered our topics today, but I'm dropping my microphone. But I was talking to you last night. You wanted to chip in on this whole balloon situation.
The balloon. The memes have been fantastic with the balloon. I mean,
haven't they?
If one could predict one thing, is that a floating balloon that's a Chinese spy balloon would produce the best memes of 2023. It's already in contention. So what I've seen has been so good. But I do want to talk a little bit, guys, about the gun grab, the gun laws. One of the things that's really important that we need to understand, or that we need to remind ourselves, is our fundamental freedoms in the Charter. And I'm looking at the Charter right now. Yeah. And our fundamental freedom is everyone has the fundamental freedom of conscience and religion, freedom of thought, belief, opinion, and expression, including freedom of the press and other media of communication, freedom of peaceful assembly, and freedom of association, right?
Yeah.
Now, we also have the rights to protect our privacy, to protect ourselves. Okay.
And how is that worded? Is that
I'm gonna call that up right now. Okay.
Yeah.
So again, with the reason why I led with reading that is because there's going to be disagreement with this, right? Like you guys were talking about the differences between like hunting rifles and assault weapons and whether or not certain things should be banned or whether or not how that gets done. But we have legal rights. So it says right here. So our legal rights is everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of the person, and the right not to be deprived thereof, except in accordance with the principles of fundamental justice. Okay. And I think you and I, Brandon, now I'm going to come back. I'm going to be done reading. You and I talked with the woman, the chairperson of the Sarnia Gun Club.
Karen
and I brought
Ball.
that up then. We have the right to security of person. We can't be so America averse. Like how Canadians sort of hold their nose up and they look at Americans like, oh, they're guns, they're cowboys, they're violent. We get so anti that. We get so anti that opinion that we forget that we have the right of security of person. And if our cities, right, our city here in Sarnia, I'm not saying Sarnia is a dangerous place, but as they get more and more violent, which we've seen violent crime rise, we've seen violent acts rise, we've seen more murders, we've seen more execution-style killings of police. One has to take into account that security of person clause in the charter and say it's there for a reason. And are firearms part of that defense? Now, I know John would probably want to take it one step further and say, are they a defense mechanism towards our Canadian government and our dictatorship? I would imagine that's on the table at this point too. But we can't get so anti-American style and sentiment sometimes here in Canada and forget that we're allowed to defend ourselves. It's in our charter. Or I could be reading it wrong.
Yes and no, though. Yes and no, because I'll give you the example. I shared the story the other day or yesterday, I think it was, the dentist. There was some sort of sordid thing going on where a patient of his thought he was having an affair with his wife.
Right.
They had an altercation, and then a couple of years later, buddy shows up at the dentist's door all drunked up and ready to fight, and the dentist bear-maced him and stabbed him and is now about to face 3 years for that. They said that didn't meet self-defense requirement. And I'm curious, okay, so what are self-defense requirements? Like, I understand the idea of not using excessive force as an example, right? Like, or let's say somebody broke into your house and now they're running away and you chase after them off of your property. That's no longer self-defense. I'll agree to that. But like, what really is self-defense?
Well, do you have to be actively defending yourself as in the form of shooting, or can it be a deterrent? You could put a sign up on your house that says firearms on premises.
Right.
That would tell people coming in who might want to rob you or might want to do something to your person and say, "Ooh, firearms on premises. Ooh, might not want to choose this house."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, that's a good deterrent, right?
Well, I mean, in reality, it is, because let's face it, there's one reason why criminals use guns, and that is to feel that they have the upper hand, because they are certainly hoping that you do not have one, because the last thing they want is an actual confrontation. They just want it to be the easiest possible route, and having the weapon allows them to do that.
Right. And I also think too that, like, to answer your question about what is self-defense, I mean, again, going back to that conversation that we had, Brandon, with the woman.
Yep.
I forget her name now. It's been almost a year. It's been
Karen
that long.
Ball.
Karen, yeah. The laws and the way you're allowed to execute, owning a gun within your house, the way you're supposed to keep it, you can almost look at those as being prohibitive for using a weapon inside your house to ward off an intruder. You almost can't, because of the way you're supposed to store it and keep it, right?
Yeah.
But again, we're allowed some form of security of person that is enshrined in our charter. So regardless if we've had extra statutes put on things, they could be out of line with what the charter intended. And for some reason, we just passed them over the years and no one really seemed to care because public sentiment is always that guns are bad and guns are always the reason why evil, crazy, enraged people do heinous things. And we never blame the individual or the root causes.
Well, it's funny you mentioned like the way we have to store them and stuff. Jim Jeffries actually has a stand-up bit on that where he's like joking about somebody breaking in and he's like, "Oh, hold on, buddy boy, you wait." And he goes over to his safe and he's like trying to open it, you know what I mean? You know what? The only workaround I have for that is a dog.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because what I've learned is as long as it's inside your house and a dog bites somebody, nobody can do anything to the dog. You don't have to put the dog down. You don't have to. The best that'll happen is the city will tell you that you got a muzzle order, and so if you take the dog off your property, you got to put a muzzle on it. Because it's looked at as a dog inside of its own premises is defending its home. So it's kind of funny that a dog has more rights to self-defense than we do.
Well, that's why we have the beware of dog signs.
Right.
They're effective as well. When I see a beware of dog,
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
for sure. But if you could have a sign that says firearms on premises, I think that is a strong security measure and a strong deterrent. And yeah, I just wanted to touch on that because we do deserve that right here in Canada. How that gets played out, that's for bigger legal minds than mine.
Right.
I'll admit that. But it makes me think that if crime is rising around me, and it is, violent crime is rising around me, and we're starting to hear people say that they're starting to get scared, then don't I have the right to security of person? And if my government can't execute that right, which admittedly, they say that we're sort of underfunded, we need more money, right? We're sort of falling behind. The judicial system is putting more criminals on the street. Shouldn't I look around and go, well, what can I do for myself? Or sorry, not shouldn't I, am I allowed? Or is my government telling me I'm not allowed?
Yeah.
It's an interesting thought with that lead off in our rights of our charter. So yeah, I wanted to just piggyback off of your guys' conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree that anybody should have the right to be able to defend their home. Like if somebody were to come in unwarranted and unwanted, I mean, there's a number of things that could go very wrong there. And having to just simply rely on dialing 911, I don't think is adequate all the time, right? I mean,
let me ask you a question then, straight point blank question, to use a really bad pun there. Would you prefer, if you have an intruder in your house, right, or an intruder in your backyard, would you prefer to call the police and wait, or have the ability to adequately handle it yourself?
I mean, I would definitely want the ability to handle it myself because I probably would anyway. I'm not much for calling police. I would suggest, though, like if they're just in the backyard, okay, fine. They've not entered your home. I think there's a little less right to go out there and maybe harm them or whatever, just because they're not posing an immediate threat at that moment, I guess. It's kind of hard to explain, right? Like that's kind of a gray area to me.
I follow you. There's like, he's in my backyard. I can see him from here. He's stealing my copper.
Yeah, like that to me is a moment where, okay, call police. But once they try to enter, I mean, me personally, I think my train of thought is going to be that I don't have time to wait for the police.
Right.
Right. And that I'm going to need to act now in order to preserve my own life or my own safety.
What do you think, Brandon?
Well, I'm just thinking how over the past few years, from many different angles, the charter has been frustratingly left to the side. Like we're seeing right now with Jordan Peterson, right? His his rights of freedom of conscience, freedom of speech being violated. Like he's in the middle of that battle. We see Brian Peckford, the guy who wrote the thing, his whole case that was developed over the 9 months of 2022, actually, then it just rendered moot. Sorry. So it's just like, and I understand this. People get frustrated and fed up with even mentioning the charter, saying it's irrelevant or it just doesn't have power, but it has power if we have people enforcing it.
Right.
Like any law, like if no one's enforcing it. So that's where my thoughts are going. It's a little frustrating watching how our government can just trample on it.
I think people have gotten so. I think the narrative around guns has been a tool of offense, an offensive tool,
Yeah.
as opposed to a defensive tool. And people have forgotten about how that they can be an effective defensive tool within the narrative, right? It's either you're for guns because you're a crazy cowboy, violent person, or you're against guns because like it's smart, safe, and good for our communities. There's no nuance in the way we talk
Right.
about it. And really, like guns are there for offensive purposes. Of course, people use them. Like John said, criminals use them to get the upper hand in a situation, or they can be used to balance that, right? And provide a deterrent. So I just think that guns are a very nuanced conversation. And we don't, whenever there's a mass shooting or an atrocity or a tragedy, we don't talk about why it happened. We just talk
Right.
about the tool that was used. That's it. The tool that was used. We don't talk about why, what that person was going through, what prescription drugs they were on, what type of background they had, what type of content were they watching before they did it, who were they associated with. We don't talk about that nearly enough.
No, definitely not. And I mean, it's always just looking for like some political reason why they did it or whatever, not the mental health aspect of it, not,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, like you look at I'll give school shootings as an example. Kid gets bullied for too long and then, you know, snaps or whatever. And we're too focused on, well, how to get the gun, not, you know, how do we prevent this from even happening in the first place?
Yeah.
Because personally, like I'll agree to the point where, okay, it would be great if guns didn't exist at all, right? Like if they just hadn't been created yet, didn't exist, fine. But the problem is that they do exist, they have been created, and that by banning them does nothing but take the people who would never have used them in an illegal way out of that pool. Right? The guns still exist, they're still accessible.
Also, too, like we don't live in a world where evil and craziness doesn't happen.
Yeah.
We do live in a world where that happens. And I think that's one of the arguments that the people who want to take weapons away, they get that right. It's like, okay, well, we do have crazy folks in this country or in this world, and they're going to lose their mind. Like, take away the tool that they can use to create as much destruction as possible at once.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where the intellectual argument for their side lies with me. And I align with it. I agree with it.
Right.
If you're going to have somebody who's crazy and it's either they're going to have a knife in their hand or they're going to have an AR-15, what's going to do more damage? Yeah. The answer is the AR-15, not at 10 times out of 10. So,
right.
I mean, that's a good argument. And we do live in a world where people do those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Right?
Fighting Hate 101 for my Rumble channel. You just type in Momentum Canada and you'll find it. But yeah, Brooke, I want to ask you, living in Sarnia, I guess compared to living in Taiwan, like in terms of safety, I don't know how crime was in Taiwan, but like, how do you feel in your current situation? Do you feel like you'd be more comfortable having the right to carry a firearm? Like, do we live in that type of environment here in Sarnia?
No, I don't think in Sarnia I have the need to carry a firearm here.
Right.
I don't think that I have the need in this city to carry a concealed weapon in public. I just don't. Sarnia, Canada in general, I don't think is like that, like the United States.
Right.
I do think though that a responsible, like if I owned a home and finding a responsible security of my home would be front of mind. Right. Whether it's a dog, like John mentioned, whether it's a firearm in the house, whether it's surveillance systems, right? Fences, things like that. I would be looking at that for sure. For sure. That would be part of the priorities I would set forth for a home. But
Right.
I don't think carrying a weapon in our city is needed at this time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, to be honest, like a few years ago, I would have like saying the same thing you did, but I think it's because I lived in a better neighborhood. You know where I live. It's not super rough, but it is kind of rough, especially at night. And I love my night walks, but there's something in me that shoots up my red flag saying it's not a good idea to go out at night. Just knowing, because just
Right.
the people I see, I don't know if it's the way they look or I don't know what the bias I'm holding is, but there's just something in me that's not comfortable anymore. Where as I used to feel safe, but I don't know what that is.
Well,
But
you don't have to be apologetic about that. I believe that throughout the process of looking in with what the police have presented us here in the city, our
Right.
city has experienced a massive uptick of violent crime, of petty crime, right? We do rank in the top 20% in the province in both categories. Like we're doing poorly. So we are seeing a little bit more sketch. Now, you asked about Taiwan. Now, look, I'm a big guy. You know what I mean? And so are you. And if you're going to, like I've always said, like being a big guy is like being a bear.
Yeah.
People don't test the bear. It happens. I've been tested, but when you're my size, you don't get tested nearly as much. My daughter, who's 13, who grew up only in Taiwan, though, says Sarnia's sketchy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She says, like, I don't want to go out. I don't want to be out at night. She compares it to her life in Taiwan, big city, over 2 million people in Kaohsiung, southern Taiwan. Lots of traffic, tons of things going on. And my daughter point blank says, yeah, Sarnia is like way more sketchier. I was like, really? She goes, yep. So
I can understand that. Well, especially as a kid. But like for me, I guess walking in the dark, knowing that I don't have a weapon to defend myself, if it ever were to happen, it'd be me with my bare hands trying to take on someone with a knife or a gun. It's not like I'm like it's not like I don't think I can physically take someone. It's just being out advantaged, But
you want to let Johnny back in?
Yeah, I tried to, but he's glitching. Are you there, Johnny? Yeah, he was having some connection issues. He switched over to his phone, which was better, but I'm assuming his phone died because it looks like
too hot. Well, let's talk about the balloon then, and then I'm gonna bugger off here and
get
for sure onto my day. Actually, get back on to finishing off some of our work. Listen, that balloon was so egregious. In the 48 hours since they shot it down, the security state, the national security state of the United States has played the, well, Trump did it too card. Already, they have played the, well, Trump did it too card, which for me, every time they use the Trump excuse in media, in the legacy media, it's because they don't have any other kind of explanation or any kind of excuse, or they couldn't really wiggle out of it. They have to bring up Trump's name so that the hive mind can just flock to Trump, 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 and make it about Trump. And then everyone forgets about why we started to talk about.
Yeah.
That's how important this was, not just from a national security standpoint, and the fact that the Chinese floated a balloon, which, by the way, went over Canadian airspace, which is egregious.
Yeah.
And I'll get into that in a minute. But it wasn't its capability and what it might have collected. It's the fact that Americans to their core, and we're not talking about like blue America, red America, left versus right. I'm talking about Americans. They are going to look at that as very, very, very negative.
Yeah.
Even Democrats expect Joseph Biden and his admin to protect America the way America expects to be protected. They expect when they see that balloon coming, you shoot that thing down.
Yeah.
You shoot it down, right? Or capture it and then respond. Like America is not going to continue to like this. And that plays so into President Trump's whole personality and profile. It's his whole thing. Trump would have shot everyone. No one out there would say Trump would have let that float into the U.S. Everyone to their core would have said Trump would have shot that thing down.
Oh, yeah.
Because Trump did stuff like that. He sent missiles into Syria, right? He told little Rocket Man, don't bother. I mean, that's his whole thing. So he definitely would have shot that down. So you can see how much the media is panicking right now.
Yeah.
With the fact that they're bringing up, well, Trump did it too. And it's all BS. Because General Milley didn't even know the situation. Or, excuse me, Mark Esper, who was the Secretary of Defense at the time, he said, well, I'm sorry, I can't recall that. It's like some insider with no name, some unnamed source that are out there saying that. So it's another deep state fake, another lie, which they've just started to just lie. They just lie all the time. They're saying, well, Trump did it too. So that Trump can't use this during the campaign. Because Trump's going to run against Biden. And all he's going to talk about is, we had an invasion. Like Lynn B's in the chat saying there's more than one balloon. Yeah, he'll say, well, we had like 30 balloons. He'll start saying, like, we had balloon after balloon after balloon. We had these big balloons. I would have shot those things down with a beautiful missile.
Yeah.
I would have used American aircraft to shoot those down with great American missiles.
Yeah, but let's face it, if he was in, would the balloon even be there?
There you go. I mean, there's another point.
They wouldn't have sent it for Trump.
So I was saying to Brandon when you were logging back on, John, is they're so scared about what Americans, and I'm talking both left and right, red and blue Americans, they expect the country to protect them. No invasions on this soil. Trust me, there's lots of Democrats out there that are extremely patriotic. And they don't want any invasions. And for them to have a balloon floating above their country like they did, they're so offended by that. They're so offended by that.
Well, and they should be, though, really.
Yes, of course. They're so offended. So like you said, like if Trump was there, the balloon never would have come. So that's why they had to make these lies and this fakeness again, saying that when Trump was president, it happened. Because it's such a powerful loss. It's such a big L for the American administration right now that it might cost them the election in 2024.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of things are going to cost them that, but this is definitely right up there because, I mean, you know, like I said, if Trump was in, would that balloon have even come? That's almost like your theory on, you know, there's a gun on the premises. That's kind of what Donald Trump is this guy that you know is not going to step back. He's not going to back down.
Beware of the crazy guy. We have the crazy guy in charge.
Yeah, right. And it's that idea that everybody knows that if they step up to him, that he's gonna bring it. So they don't, and they wait until you got Sleepy Joe, and you know he's obviously a weak president. And
is he a weak president or is he compromised? Because like you said, China never would have done that had it been, if you believe that, right? Which I think we all agree that we believe that.
Right.
Right. So
that's a fair question.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
I guess the result, there is no difference.
Yeah.
No, there is a bit of difference there. I do. I think if you're compromised, like let's say remember, this is an anti-globalist podcast that we do here on Monday. We talk about globalism versus the nation state, right? So if Joe's in on it with the globalists and he believes in a global future and he's in on that, then him letting the Chinese sort of survey the capabilities of America might be part of their plan. It doesn't make him weak. It makes him complicit in their plan. Mm. It's different things. It's not weakness versus part of it. You know what I mean? One could argue that he's actually strong by doing that because he don't give a rip. Like, oh yeah, go ahead. I'm Joe Biden. I'm part of the globalists. I'm going to win no matter what. I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
I can have a debaucherous son out there doing whatever he wants and we'll still win.
Yeah.
You know,
see what gets me, like even Canada's defense minister, he was saying how they couldn't tell the public because it would compromise their mission. But what would happen if it was a bomb and they hadn't let the public know? Right.
Well, and like, what do you mean compromise their mission? I missed that.
I don't
statement.
get. I don't get that either. They said they have these processes and these strategies militarily. That's the reason why they can't let the public know. That's why days went by without the Canadian people knowing.
It's the old excuse that we're not able to handle the information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean what? Our Canadian Armed Forces have these strategies that we don't know of?
Yeah, right.
I mean, we're allowing permanent residency holders to apply for our military. Kind of,
Yeah.
you know, no disrespect to James Topp and all of our veterans.
Yeah.
Like, stop it. Like, you know, we had a balloon invading our airspace, which, by the way, John and I were talking about this. We found out that 11 MPs were compromised by CCP money. We have police stations that are basically fronts for the CCP operating and controlling their citizens here in Canada. And now we've had a CCP balloon float through our country. No one talks about it. We don't care. There's no response. There's no tit for tat. Look, I don't have to have people tell me things. I can tell by lack of action what's happening. And I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned at this point that our leadership of the parliament right now hasn't responded in kind to show us that we are a sovereign nation uninfluenced by a rising superpower in China.
Right.
Which, by the way, which our ideals and our culture, minus the thousands and possibly even millions at this point of overseas Chinese living here, don't really align with. We don't align with communism.
No.
At least we didn't in our founding.
We shouldn't.
Right?
No.
We don't align with that.
The only military, I don't know military talk, but you remember when Trump, he'd always brag about his strategies of not telling the press before he did something. And that to me always made sense. Like, why would presidents get on television and tell the enemy what they're going to do? Like, that type of stuff I get. But when your leaders are withholding information that I think the public deserves to know, it's not, I don't know.
Well, there's a difference in, mentioning your operations versus, hey, there's a foreign friggin' spy balloon hovering over our country.
To me, the publicity would assist in scaring the Chinese, because if everybody's talking about it, that usually puts more pressure on governments to do something a little more drastic. So I don't know. I'm not an expert in this, but just my thoughts.
Well, no. I don't think we have to be experts in this to be citizens who feel outraged that our military, one, failed to prevent it. Sorry, let's back it up where John starts. One, failed to present a large enough deterrent that they didn't want to do it. That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, failed to prevent it, right? Number three, let it happen, right? Number four, really not say much about it. And number five, not respond at all. Like,
at least until it was too late.
Now, you can look at each one and say, okay, well, Brooke, the response should be measured. We should, okay, fine, study it. It should take time. But those are at least five things that have happened that have made us as citizens feel a little bit disappointed. Or is that an understatement? A little bit.
Yeah, there's definitely no response back to China. Like, don't do this again. Like, there's, like you said, there was nothing.
Nothing.
It took what, 5 days to even take it down? Right?
I got a message from a city councilor here in the city. We were chatting back and forth about that. And he said, and they shot it down in the deepest water possible, so we can't collect it and have a look at it.
Apparently it's 45 feet deep where it landed.
It's interesting. It is. It's interesting. I mean, hell, who knows? Maybe it's a distraction. I don't know. It's really, it is definitely a confusing situation, though.
Yeah.
If it is a distraction, it's a very good one, because it's offending to me. As a Canadian, it's very offending to me. And I know that I would imagine my American brothers and sisters who watch this stream and who watch our shows and stuff, they're probably even more offended. You know what I mean? Like, we're sort of a passive nation here in Canada. I think we get our back up really well when we're like sort of pushed, We're passive in comparison, but I'm offended by this. Absolutely.
We're definitely passive. We're okay with the Chinese police station, but we're drawing the line at the balloon.
Yeah.
Oh, the combination of all of it too, John, is what's got me feeling this way, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's happening. I know that Justin Trudeau said, "Oh, well, you give it word salad." I know that there was a little bit of scuttlebutt from the Conservatives, but there's been no reckoning for those 11 MPs and why they're there and where the money came from, right? And no one's really followed up too much about these fake police stations, because I'm going to tell you right now, they won't close. They'll just figure out a way to hide them.
Yeah. Well, I don't even understand why they're here. Like,
well, part of that I do, actually. So it's not to, how do I say it? Knowing the Chinese the way I do, okay? And this is being a bit general, yeah? They're not really here trying to police Canada.
Right.
They're here policing their own.
Right.
Because they're very protective about Chinese. And they're here policing their own. So, for example, you'll have people in China who will do business, and it doesn't have to be shady. It could be just against the party. And what they'll do is they'll take off, or they'll fly their family over here so that like their family assets and their family can't be held accountable. They'll just take the hit and they'll go to jail. Well, they don't like that. Right. Because the fear of like, taking out your family, the feel of, they want to keep the fear omnipresent, right? So they use those overseas stations to keep the fear in all Chinese nationals. Now, and that's one. And number two, as much as I love my Chinese, my Chinese people here in Canada, I've said a lot of nice things about their culture and their way of life. They'll always see themselves as Chinese. They're always going to see themselves as Chinese, and it's a way to keep their lineage and their connections to their country. So in a way, it works as a cultural outpost.
I think that's the same with pretty much all immigrants, though, right?
Yeah. Well, in America, is it though? This was my argument during the campaign, is that I believe Canada's interests at this point nationally should be transitioning from a mosaic, a cultural mosaic, as we like to call it, where everyone maintains their identity, to a melting pot where we all melt into being Canadian and assume a Canadian identity. At this point, Canada has sort of forged ahead an identity. We have a true Canadian identity. We have a system. It's matured. It'd be nice if all of the folks that are coming here could melt into that. That's my argument for cohesion, for togetherness, right? And I think the U.S. does that a little bit better than we do. If you talk to an American, they'll say, we're American. I talk to my Italian brothers and sisters in the city, and they'll still tell me they're Italian. They won't say they're Canadian, you know what I mean? So true. I think that's something that's been neat about Canada. But I think that, my instincts and senses are telling me that it could be in Canada's interest if we melt a little bit more into being Canadian.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think that, both can happen. It just depends, right? And that it depends on if the values you're holding on to, mesh well with what we would view as the Canadian values. There are certain things, like, just as an example, if some of the values that you're holding on to are homophobic, or something like that, right? Like, then that's where I'm like, okay, that doesn't really coexist with what we're doing here. But like in your example with Italians, I've got some Italian heritage, and I'm understanding of the fact that there are certain things that they'll keep. Same with the Chinese, same with anybody that comes over, right? Whether it's their food, their music, whatever it is that's a part of their culture. I think it does add, and I think there's a lot of ways that we can absolutely meld into a Canadian identity as well. One thing that I do like is hockey is a great way of doing it. CBC always runs the Punjabi hockey night in Canada, which honestly is kind of a riot to listen to sometimes. But that is one thing that I do think kind of helps, because I think, like, sports entertainment kind of stuff like that is a way for people to come together and be, I guess, feeling a sense of unity.
Yeah. Yeah. I just look for, I've talks with a lot of folks, right? And one thing that they're saying to me quite often is, we're so worried about all of our groups these days.
Right.
And it isn't just racial groups. It's also sexual orientation, identity stuff. And everyone's in their tribes. And they're like, I want to run a classroom. I want to run a gym. I want to run a retail outlet floor. And everyone's got their needs and special things. It's hard. It's very difficult to bring everyone together.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that just screams that we're all in our own corners. It'd be nice if we just were sort of melting into being Canadian a little bit more, and we put we put a little bit more emphasis on that. I think we've worked really hard a lot for tolerance, and I guess a word that we don't really love these days is inclusivity and diversity, right? But we've put a lot of emphasis on those things. It's possible that we might have overemphasized them and forgot about like the core. That's where I land with the melting pot. And again, I have friends who live in America who are from Taiwan, and they tell me I'm American.
Right.
Yeah. They'll say I'm American. And that's America. You become an American there. I don't know if we've gotten there as a country yet.
Well, no, because I think that part of that too, though, is if you look at the U.S., I mean, they are a very patriotic bunch. I think even given maybe 5-10 years of living in the U.S. myself, I'd probably end up saying I'm American too, just because it's that kind of infectious kind of patriotism that they hold.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's because they were the rebels. Canadians didn't rebel against their government.
We asked politely.
Yeah, we asked if we could leave.
Right. We don't have that F around, F out, find out.
Well, we
slogan,
knew that we took the hardest territory over here. We're like, it's cold as hell up here. Eventually they'll just give up on us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You want to fight over something, you're going to fight over the South, the sugar cane, the cotton, the tobacco, all that stuff that they were using at the time. We're like, not going to really be fighting over too much up here for a while.
I do think you bring up a good point, though, like the idea that we kind of put everybody in their own little boxes.
Yeah.
Right. Whether it's sexuality, race, religion, whatever. And I've always been kind of confused by that, because to me, the idea of being inclusive has absolutely nothing to do with basing anything off of your race, your religion, or any of that. It has everything to do with, okay, let's get together and kind of discuss things and whatnot, and not paying any attention. Like I was actually thinking about making a joke post the other day, with how businesses have to have like a rainbow flag now to show that they're inclusive. Well, back in my day, all they needed was an open sign. Right? Like, I don't know. I grew up going through school in the 90s, and to me, multiculturalism was taught throughout that. We were taught that, we are to accept people on their individual basis and not make any judgments based on where they came from, where they go to church, or who they love. And now it's like, that's all we focus on. And I'm trying to think, like, how in the hell are we supposed to come together if all we do is continuously bring up our differences?
It's funny you brought that up. I thought that the 90s did multiculturalism really well.
I thought so.
I thought it did really well. Like, it was a nice balance of, don't be racist, because that's ridiculous. Don't do that. That hurts people. Be inclusive. Diversity's good. We want people to have, opinions. It was nice. It got us open.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it set the tone for a good stretch. But I think recently, it wasn't building over time. It recently just escalated. It launched. And I don't want to say it launched with social media, because that's too much of a throwaway. I don't think it did with social media. I think it's recent phenomenon. I think it's like within the last 5 years, it accelerated. I think it's being used
to
divide. You know,
Well, I've said it before where I'm starting to see all of the division that goes on and realizing governments don't want a strong community because a strong community doesn't need the government.
It's true.
I mean, if we're a strong community and we support each other and we are willing to help out those who are in need, then what do we need the government to do for us?
Well, now you're describing Marxism. Now you're describing communism. And that's the elephant in the room, right?
Actually, though, you know what? Here's what I've always said about this. It's kind of funny because in a way you're right. But here's the difference. It's not forced. And I think that we as a people, I think in some ways agree with those socialist ideas. I mean, look at the way GoFundMe works, right?
Yes. Yes.
We absolutely agree with that kind of idea. However, it's just when it isn't forced.
It's funny. Well, it's not funny, but here's something. Do you honestly think, like, we know that our current liberal government is they're doing things that remind us of communism, but do you think that they honestly identify as communists? Like those people that left that dinner party in Hamilton and they got shouted down by the protesters. Do you think they identify as communists?
I don't think they do, no.
I don't think so either. I think that we've become so entrenched in an ideology that is rooted in socialism and leftism and has new technocracy sort of veins in it, that we're just becoming that because that's what happens, is that there's just more control. There's more centralization. Like Shaw and Rogers merged recently.
Right.
We're going to have less options in the market, like market options, right? Like access to markets, access to, to commerce. Like it's self-perpetuating. And people think that they're doing good. Like the government thinks, oh, well, I saw this, I forget which minister it was, but it was a minister telling Canadians all the good stuff that they gave us this year. Well, we gave you this and we gave you that and we gave you this and we gave you that.
Well,
but you know what? Like, that's what communism does.
Well, and it's good to them, though. Like, this is why it's good to them, because they are so far disconnected from what real life is for most Canadians that they think, let's say that $500 rental credit that they gave people was a really big deal. Are you kidding me? When you look at the requirements for that $500 rental credit, that is absolutely doing dick all for anybody other than in that moment they got $500.
Yeah.
Because first of all, if you were a single person, you didn't even qualify for it if you made over $20,000. And then on top of that, in order to qualify while making $20,000, your rent has to be like half of your income. So you're telling me that giving somebody $500 who lives off of $10,000 a year that's rewarding? Are you kidding me? It's pointless.
Well, boys, it's time for me to get going. It's 1:30. Yeah. I got to move on. I just wanted to say good chat today. Good hanging with you. That balloon, I'm telling you, that balloon, they're going to try so hard to bury that. They do not want that to be part of any conservative, Republican campaign strategy. They're going to want to memory hole that thing because that is offending to all of us. And it should be. And that's why I want to come on today to make sure that we talked about this, because just like FTX and all that money that got siphoned from all the crypto bros that thought they were going to make money and they got put in the politicians' hands and it got funneled to Ukraine. This is another one that we can't let this one go away. So come election time, when it's Justin versus Pierre or Justin versus whoever, we need to remind everyone about all these things. And it goes back to Afghanistan. It goes back to the balloon. It goes back to FTX. It goes back to all this stuff, like the real stuff that matters, not the classified documents at Biden's house, at Trump's house, not this stuff. That's all stagecraft. This is the stuff that truly matters.
And I just hope the Mexicans will send a balloon so that we can pop it and grab the candy.
Hopefully there's only candy in it, though.
Or I don't know. They could send some other things.
Send me some habaneros. That's my favorite hot. That's my
Send
favorite hot
tacos. Make it a
dog sandwich.
Tuesday.
Yeah. All right, fellas. Good to see you. Okay.
Right
I'm
on,
outta here.
fellas. All right,
Absolutely.
thanks. Later, guys. All right, thank you, guys. That was a great show. I had fun with those two. I'm gonna enjoy having John on the channel. He's gonna have his own show. We're not exactly sure how it's what day. First of all, we don't know what day it's gonna be. We've been tossing around ideas of calling his segment at least, The Unacceptable View, a spinoff of The View. But we just got to be careful of not running into any copyright issues with logos and stuff like that. But we thought that was funny. And so, yeah, I just want to I'll read your guys' comments. Hilarious, Lenny. Okay, so you guys are chatting. Thank you guys so much for lighting up the chat and being so respectful. I see you guys chatting with one another. It's always great. Right on, right on. Freedom, says Conway. Gutting. Freedom, says Fighting Hate 101. Have you set a day and time for John's show? Yeah. So no, not yet. We just wanted to kind of introduce him to you guys first over these last few live streams. So now that you know who he is, I went out and bought him a little lamp so that he's a little bit more lit in his room. But it looks like we're going to have to fight through some tech issues. I'm not sure what we're going to have to do to help him out in that regard. His laptop wasn't cooperating with him. Looked like he was using his phone there. So we'll just have to make sure everything's good to go so that the streams go smooth. But thank you, guys. And the last thing I'll mention, the banner's been saying it the entire time. We're on Rumble, and I'm really trying to push the Rumble thing because I need some subscribers. The last time I checked, I'm sitting at 22 followers. It refreshes every 10 minutes or so, so I don't know if that's accurate now. So 22 followers I'm at right now. I need 25 to be able to live stream. That's one of the requirements. So if you guys are on Rumble and you haven't subscribed, you can find us at Momentum Canada. You just go into the search bar, type in Momentum Canada, and our little symbols there. You can see our symbol on the YouTube channel right now. It's a little Canadian leaf with the two arrows that ramp up. So go over there, subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. And if you're not subscribed to this channel, make sure you're subscribed because that helps us out as well. And the thumbs up, that does a lot as well. So I appreciate the thumbs up as well. Thank you, Lynn, for doing all that you do. Lynn B, just special shout out to Lynn B. I don't thank her enough, but she's just super supportive. She's always making sure the chat is well-groomed, well-behaved, and just making sure everybody knows where to go if we have special announcements and that type of stuff. So thank you, Lynn. We appreciate you more than you know. Mike, great to have you. Fighting Hate 101, great to have you as well. Lenny, you were new to the channel. I hadn't seen your comments before, so I'm happy that you joined us today. You had a lot of good stuff. A second-class Canadian, great to have you. Conway, Mike Mole, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll be back next Monday, same time, same place, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you. God bless, and take care.
A Prayer for Walton Bay, a novel based in the area of Kingston, Ontario in the late 1800s. This story was inspired from the desire to see Canada return to its simple roots after seeing such division during the pandemic in recent years. Available now on Amazon, this book will help fund our efforts here at Momentum Canada, since we are not government funded. Rather than just ask for money, I wanted to give you something wholesome for you to enjoy as well. So place your order today and enjoy a great story for such a time as this.